OutKick 360 is back.
We're back, baby.
Alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Koharski, I'm Jonathan Hutton. Glad you're with us. David Reed and Jakob Swanson making the show happen. Lance Lee took the day off for 420. Guys, welcome.
Chad a little nervous.
I'm
today.
just trying not to be
Chad,
nervous.
come on.
Maybe if I celebrated 420 properly, I wouldn't be so nervous.
Well, we were counting.
If I was a Lance right now.
The number of people in the Twitter room, and it's an enormous number today. And Chad gets a little nervous with a bigger audience.
As you guys were counting up, I just felt my anxiety really going through the roof. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the show.
Jacob has.
I'm a very nervous guy, as you guys know.
Jacob has something for the first break that'll ease your concerns.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that blue or red, Jacob?
The blue or red pill?
Both.
We don't want to give you offsetting pills.
It is 420. Let's get wild. Let's do it all.
420. I remember. I remember in high school there were like two guys that would walk the halls. So Paul, my era, unfortunately, was the Columbine era, right? And so they outlawed this, but it was the trench coat group. They outlawed the trench coat guys, but they were called thrashers. Like we had the preps, the athletes, the thrashers, the stoners.
Hold on.
What did they thrash?
Did they call themselves? Did they give themselves this name?
No,
Or
it was like the little. It was like the group. Your little cliques.
This is like the Rigmas from Saved by the Bell. Was it like a gang, or that was the group, like the
You don't
grunge
remember
kids?
them? Like you and I are virtually the same age.
I don't
the
ever
thrashers.
recall calling. I know what you're talking about. I can see the guys walking around halls in trench coats, but we called them like alternative, not thrashers.
Alternative.
Alt thrash.
Well, alt thrash. Anyway, you had the Abercrombie and Fitch Army.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they would walk the halls starting in like January and talk about Smoke Fest, which would be on 420. So every year on 420, I think of Smoke Fest 2001.
When I think of 420, I think of someone at our school got suspended for writing 420 on a locker, and the teacher who saw it had to ask what it meant. Had no idea.
Yeah.
And so one other kid told the teacher what it meant, and then the kid got suspended, which prompted me to think, if you write something down and the teacher doesn't even know the meaning, or people in the school don't know the meaning, then is it offensive? Right? Like if it's so mysterious to the teacher that
But they were writing on school property.
That's dumb.
Yeah, but I don't think they would have had a problem if it wasn't 420 that was right.
Oh.
I'm old enough.
It was something that could be wiped off. I think it
I'm old
wasn't
enough
permanent.
and went to a small enough private school that whatever drug culture was going on was very, and a couple kids got tossed, but it's very behind the scenes. I remember, you guys get a kick out of this. We had an underground candy bar thing going on. You know, because you couldn't we didn't have vending machines and stuff, and people needed
Candy bars were not allowed.
Well,
Gonna get that
You
candy.
brought did you have a guy you could go to get the candy bar?
Right. He bought cheap stuff and sold stuff.
Because there were no vending machines in the school?
Yeah, he had a side business.
Yeah, that's a great
And
young entrepreneur.
And he made good money. And so I remember Arlene Wacker, my history teacher. Wacker, bad name. She was a great
Arlene,
teacher.
also a bad name. Arlene Wacker?
She was the second best teacher.
We've already uncovered the Thrashers, and now Arlene Wacker. Wow.
She was the second best teacher
What was
in
her
the school.
husband's name?
I have no idea. She was the second best teacher in the school. And she, at assembly, made this impassioned thing that she
Mr. Richard Wacker to you.
She's not going to tolerate, and the faculty are not going to tolerate any more of this. If you were busted with this, you were getting double detention, serious problems, blah, blah, blah. I, of course, pay no heed to this. I have got to have a Snickers this morning. I immediately go, I think, to Mark Bromfeld, maybe was the guy selling, and
Much more traditional name, Mark
Snickers.
Bromfeld.
You know, it probably cost him 50 cents. I paid $2 for it. Busted. Boom. Whacker walks right into the transaction.
Is this guy like a hedge fund manager now, or?
Yeah, I see this
what
guy,
a brilliant kid.
I don't know. He's doing well for himself.
He went on to
I've
start
seen him
Amazon.
on
It's Jeff
Facebook.
Bezos. Paul went to school with Jeff Bezos. That's the kicker of the story.
I see him on Facebook. I don't know what he's into. And I'm not positive it was him. There were a couple guys that did it.
I've never heard this story. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is great.
But I mean, there was a whole
It reminds me of the
underground.
pencil trade in our elementary school, but that was more out front. This was more of a black market
But I don't know
candy bar trade.
how he or the guys that were doing it didn't get busted more, because people would come out, the bell would ring, you'd come out of a class, and there'd be like 4 or 5 people
Yeah.
that had to have something to make it through the next period.
Was it just him, or did he have like runners for? Did he have mules?
Well, we weren't that big, so I think it was primarily just him. I'll have to do some research on
Yeah, we
this
need to know
and
this.
develop more information.
It's also funny to think about the teacher seeing a bunch of kids,
Hopped
like
up
a
on-
bunch of
Yeah.
meth heads, run to a backpack in between classes, and immediately, if you're the teacher, thinking, "Well, this kid's dealing drugs in my school." All right, everybody's going to this kid and getting stuff out of, and
they
and
knew
it's
it
a
wasn't
Butterfinger
drugs.
that he's handing to people, and just laughing at, he's selling candy
They
bars out
knew
of his backpack.
it wasn't drugs, because whatever drugs were going on was much more clandestine.
Yeah. I see a big, like, uppity private school like yours, like speedballs being more of the choice and not a 420 type. That's like too low level for
Well,
your
you
school.
shouldn't use the word big. I mean, my graduating class was under 9.
Well, I mean, like prestigious, like a rich private school.
I came in this morning. And I was
Wasn't that
disappointed in Jakob Swanson because I wanted the details. I said, "Give me the history of 420," and he had to look it up. He didn't know.
They stumbled in, a bunch of stone kids stumbled into the number by accident.
See,
I'm sure.
I'd always been told it was from High Times magazine, and that there was like an old story about 420 like p.m. meeting up to smoke, and High Times magazine turned it into
A holiday.
Their holiday.
Is that the reason?
I don't know.
don't know.
I'm not exactly sure of the reason.
That's why we have these trusty
But
computers. in
that's
front
why
of
we
us.
have
Now I'm gonna look
Jacob.
it up.
I thought that's why we had Jacob here. And I told you guys about 7-Up. I was 13 or 14 years old and went to Virginia Beach for my family lives there. And my cousin took me to my first like legitimate stoner concert where everybody's out pregame. You went for the pregame festival, not the actual concert, the pre-concert festival. It was Phil Lesh and Friends. It was like half of Fish.
See, I knew it would be connected to fish.
And so we went, and I learned for the first time what 7-Up meant, and I heard that probably 1,000 times, just walking into the venue.
What does 7-Up mean?
It means they were undercover cop over
Police.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys ready for this origin of 420?
Yes.
We're going to enlighten the audience today. In 1971, 5 high school students in San Rafael, California, used the term 420 in connection with a plan to search for an abandoned cannabis crop based on a treasure map made by the grower.
So it's
Calling
the Goonies.
themselves the Waldos because their typical hangout spot, it's like the Thrashers we were talking about, because their typical hangout spot was a wall outside the school. The 5 students, Steve Capper, Dave Reddix, Jeffrey Knoll, Larry Schwartz, and Mark Gravich, designated the Louis Pasteur statue on the grounds of San Rafael High School as their meeting spot, and 4:20 p.m. as their meeting time. This sparked a story in High Times
Wow.
magazine mentioning 4:20 as a time to smoke, and then a 4:20 holiday started in 1991. But this all originated in 1971 with 5 high school students.
I think people are a little over impassioned
Now,
about it.
now read that and think of a Nicolas Cage movie. The
Yeah.
Waldos.
This might actually, given Nicolas Cage's career arc, this may be his next role. He may actually play one of the high school students at
Where
60
is
years old.
Nicolas Cage?
He was hosting, and I didn't watch it, but he hosted a Netflix series about the history of curse words.
Oh yeah, you were fired up for this.
And
You haven't watched
each
it yet?
episode would focus on a different curse word.
You're fired up about this program, but you haven't watched it
I haven't
yet?
watched it. It's on Netflix though.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode. It was not something I'm going back for. I watched it during our hiatus from January to March. I watched one episode, thought it was going to be binge worthy. It sucked.
Really?
Yeah,
Did he have a
it's-
guest on it,
It's,
or was it
it's
just
completely
him?
scripted, and it's not entertaining. It's more like historical, and even the history is not that interesting.
I'm out.
All right.
They start with the F word. If they can't get the F word over, I'm not going to watch the second episode.
You're not coming back for
Yeah.
I'm out.
whatever's next.
I'm
Yeah.
out. I'll let you make that decision for me.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. FanDuel.com/OK360 is where you can get the best bets. $1,000 risk-free bet for new users. And you can do that by signing up at the link right there on the screen. FanDuel.com/OK360, up to $1,000 back if you lose your first bet. Risk-free for new users and FanDuel. The Denver Broncos reportedly calling up the Atlanta Falcons, trying to trade up to the 4th overall pick, or at least inquiring on what it would take to get there.
Where's Denver?
9.
Denver's at 9.
It's not a terrible spot for Atlanta, though. If they've got their heart set on a non-quarterback, you're probably, if it's Kyle Pitts, you're probably losing him. But it's not a bad move for Denver. I don't think Denver gets enough flack for how poorly they've done post-Manning. I mean, it's been a disaster with the Brock Osweilers and
Paxton Lynch, and now Drew Lock, who I've seen enough of to know he's not the guy. And quite frankly, John Elway, to me, should have been in trouble. He did the smart thing. He handed it over to an outside GM and backed off into a executive role, not responsible for personnel. But they've done a terrible job at quarterback. And that's one of those teams that I'd say you got to keep trying until you find a guy. Good defense, defensive-minded coach, but they're not there at quarterback. Now, if you love now you have to love 2 again, because they could surprise. Everybody thinks it's Mac Jones at 3 to San Francisco, but you don't know for sure. So you've got to love 2 guys at 4, because you don't know who's going at 3.
So Woody Page of the Denver Gazette says it's Justin Fields or Trey Lance that they want.
Okay. Well, that's reasonable. If they want one of those 2 guys, Atlanta. Now, I would say this about Atlanta. Yes, you may be sacrificing getting the best non-quarterback in this draft, but what you're getting in return is going to include a first-rounder next year. And all of a sudden, this thing where you get your quarterback of the future now because you're never going to be high again. Well, if you have 2 first-rounders next year and you see the end of Matt Ryan, well, you can get your quarterback next year then if you feel like you have to. And you can get somebody very good at 9 that helps you win this year with Matt Ryan. So that's got to be pretty tempting for Atlanta if Denver's making the full offer. And we know what those full offers to make a move like that are worth.
Well, how much do you hate it if you're Denver that word got out that you called?
Well,
10 days,
why?
This
Because
happened 10 days before the draft.
Because it rings the bell for somebody else to
Yes.
call? Yeah, well, how unlikely is it to get out?
Well, there are reports that the Eagles could trade back up in the first round if a quarterback slides, the right quarterback were to slide down.
Well, the Patriots.
The Patriots are, well, yeah.
I would also think about it as a player to trade up to get a quarterback.
So it sounds to me like the Patriots are thinking in terms of who's going to fall to them, and can they take advantage if the guy they like or a guy that they like falls enough to the Patriots that they can, again, kind of take advantage of the market.
That's what the Patriots, I think, would normally do.
Yeah, but maybe not now. They're in a go-for-it mode.
Well, not even that. Like they went the opposite route in free agency because they felt like they were bidding against 4 teams instead of 14 this offseason because of the salary cap structure. That's why they went all in on a lot of free agents. They said, hey, the situation across the league is a little weird, salary cap-wise. We're in a decent spot money-wise, and we're about one of 5 teams that can say that. So let's go after the pool of free agents now because we're not going to be bidding against many other teams. We can win the bids to get the players we want and go all in free agency in a year where no one else is willing to do that. Is this a year where they're also willing to trade their draft capital to move up to get their quarterback?
I still think, Denver moving up is probably wants to assure itself, A, that nobody else trades up ahead of it, and B, to be ahead of Carolina at 8, which could still take a quarterback if somebody it likes is there. No sure thing with Sam Darnold, and very determined to get a good quarterback. Cincinnati's not taking a quarterback at 5. Miami, we don't think, is taking a quarterback at 6, though that's not a definite thing either. They could do something. And then you're talking about who else could come up. The Eagles could come up. The Eagles are at 12. The Patriots could come up. They're at 15. So you're guarding against those teams getting ahead of you if you're at Denver. But there's also potential that those teams don't come up and Denver could sit at 9 and get, if not the 4th quarterback, the 5th quarterback.
Could.
Which could well be Lance or Fields.
But, yeah, I don't think you can get Fields at 9. I think
somebody's coming up, or he's.
I
he's
think
definitely
someone
gone?
would come up to trade ahead of you to make sure that they get Justin Fields.
See, here's the
Justin
thing.
Fields is to me the most underrated quarterback of this group because we have talked so much over the last month of Mac Jones. Trey Lance,
He's got a lot of unknown to him.
a lot.
A lot of
And
unknown.
because-
he's going to need time too. I don't think he's a guy you drop in on opening day.
Right.
You're going to need to buy him some time, which is fine, but you've got to have an alternate plan.
To me, if you're looking for if you're Denver and you're looking for an alternate plan for what they have in Drew Lock, who's going into year 3.
Yeah, I think so. You can buy yourself some time with Locke.
Yeah, well, Justin Fields could come in and compete for the job. I don't know. I don't see Trey Lance the same way, and that's only because of the limited amount of time that we have seen him at the level we've seen him play, where it's one read, and it's not his fault. It's a one read and go, and his athleticism and elite talent takes over.
He's not played that much, and
He played one game last year.
Right, and he's played at a low level.
Right.
Also not his
So
fault.
did Wentz.
But here's the thing. So if we go at 4, Atlanta's been tabbed a lot with Pitts, right? Who else have we seen him tabbed with?
Trey Lance.
With Lance. So it's either a quarterback, and if it's not a quarterback, it's probably Pitts. Cincinnati at 5, Sewell or Chase. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's a big decision there. We haven't talked a lot about them, but they're going one of 2 ways there to help Burrow, either with protection, which would be my vote, or a weapon, but it's hard for him to throw to that weapon if he doesn't have a beat of time to throw him that weapon. And you got to keep the guy healthy. Miami, I don't know. Who's Miami? They want weapons for Tua also.
Well,
that could be the
Miami,
second receiver.
that depends on what Atlanta does and what happens with Pitts. Kyle Pitts is going to Miami at 6 if he's there.
If he's there. If he's not there, maybe a receiver, maybe Chase, maybe Waddle.
Yep.
Lions at 7, they're a little bit of a mystery with the new regime. Not quite sure. Panthers at 8, I think also, Pitts isn't going to be there. Could be a quarterback, could be an offensive lineman. Broncos at 9, we're thinking going up. Dallas could be the first cornerback.
Yep. That's likely.
So
A lot of discussion today with the NFL draft. We're gonna hit on it throughout this hour, and we'll get to some Titans-specific topics coming up at the Tennessee Hour, along with some college football headlines, including the Tennessee Vols, the Nashville Predators winning last night, doing some nice things in their playoff run, and much more. But when we come back, Paul sent a text to the group last night that said, hey, I'm ready to riff on character flaws across the league in the NFL draft. We do that next on OutKick 360. OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, and you can find the podcast literally anywhere. Find the link to everything available at OutKick 360, both on Twitter and on Facebook. We hope you'll like and subscribe to all of the feeds. Greg Cosell of NFL Films joins us starting tomorrow on a weekly basis, every Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. The very best film analysis from Greg Cosell of NFL Films tomorrow, discussing all things NFL Draft right here on OutKick 360. And then the Greg Cosell podcast, exclusive to the OutKick network, will debut on Thursday afternoon. Paul, some character concerns for Penei Sewell, for instance. Albert Breer, in his weekly column, pointed this out in Monday Morning Quarterback. Character concerns not just for Sewell, but others at the top of this NFL draft, which makes you think what?
Well, I've been thinking this all along, that for this draft, I think you have to be particularly careful. Because you haven't been able to get close to these guys in an individual way outside of these 5 Zoom conversations that you can have with them. How much do you trust your scouts in terms of getting close to the people who are close to these guys? A lot of that's also taking place in phone calls and stuff. I think less in campus visits where you're talking to the secretary, the janitor, and the people that you've known. And then the opt-outs add another layer of concern, because these guys in another year of maturation haven't been around those people who give you that added insight beyond the head coach, the coordinator, and the position coach. So I would go into it with a degree of fear and taking less risk. I just wanted to read that one piece of Breer's column, which tied directly into this thinking and has kind of put me on more alert. He said, it's worth diving into Sewell a little bit more, because there's just a lot there with the former Oregon star who opted out of the 2020 season. On one hand, as one scouting director said, he's 19 years old on the tape from 2019, and he was a man on the film. On the other, as another exec says, maturity remains an issue. There's a lot to sort through there, he says in a quote, and there are lapses in play too. He doesn't dominate all the time, but he's a great athlete. Not quotes here. And he's also right there with Micah Parsons and Alabama's Christian Barmore as fantastic talents with character flags, and guys who might have a harder time dispelling questions this year than they would in a normal year because of the lack of opportunity to do so in person with teams. So I'm a little frightened, and I hadn't heard Micah Parsons as character concerns. I hadn't seen a lot about Christian Barmore, who to me seemed like an automatic. But if you've got that on your draft board for these guys, and you're not, you're never going to be totally sure. But if you don't feel really good, I would tend to go to the next guy. I would tend to narrow it and have something about people you feel totally good about. Now, there are going to be people, teams that feel good about taking the risk, and they're going to say, we feel so good about our scouting that some of these teams are going to be scared off, and we're going to be able to take advantage of that market where people are scared off of these character concerns, for lack of a better expression, and we're going to be able to manipulate the market here, right? And if somebody's going to score down Parsons or Barmore because of some character concern, and they're playing it safe the way Paul Kuharsky's talking about it, that's going to create a market inefficiency, and we're going to be able to get a guy who's 5 picks better than we should have gotten, and that's going to be a home run for us. Another thing that Breer points out is that Urban Meyer and Rule in Carolina recruited a lot of these guys not long ago, and they have real insight into them for over a long haul of time, which is a real benefit to not long ago college coaches. And that's a bonus for Jacksonville and for Carolina. But I'm playing it safer. And I'm also, I admit, my glasses are a little Titans tainted because they just got burned, and we live in Nashville. by a huge character miss on Isaiah Wilson. So our hometown team, I think, really needs to play it careful. Because if they have any kind of character miss, they're lit on fire.
Well, and aren't we finding out also that the worst character flaw a prospect can possess is the lack of a love of playing football? I mean, you can almost deal with some other things if they've been in trouble in their past, if there are other, I mean, I'm not talking just as a human being necessarily about character flaws, but if I hear doesn't really love football about someone or a questionable work ethic, that to me is the biggest character flaw that one of these prospects can possess.
I think that's often what they're talking about, though. Maturity is a big umbrella, and immaturity fits like, he's great when he loves it, but he's distracted, or he's immature with his work habits. I think that ties into a good share of the maturity umbrella, and you have to know what you can pull out of a guy, and this is a big part of projecting.
Well, with Penei Sewell, the only thing I've seen knocking the guy, and he's going to be a top 5 pick, we presume. The only thing I've seen knocking the guy is physicality, off the line of scrimmage. I haven't read anything that's off the field with him. And I think a lot of people see character flaw or concerns within an organization about a player and think there's something going on behind the scenes. That thing behind the scenes may just be what Chad's pointing out. The drive to improve and effort.
Dedication.
I couldn't find anything with Dane Brugler in The Athletic in his write-up or in Detillier about Penei Sewell specifically. But, Paul, to your overall point, I mean, in a typical, or the background or the hometown or wherever, right? You're not doing that now.
You can't. You're limited. And so, and look, there's an element of chance in all of this every year. Right? It feels like, to me, there's more of an element of chance in it now. And if your team's on the cusp, it's more dangerous, right? I mean, if you're, if you're in your window and you're in need of 4 guys who can really help you out, you're screwed if you miss in a bigger way.
I think with Sewell, the other thing is the opt-out year, right? And him being 20 years old. The last time you see him play, he's 19. But he's not the only one. I mean, Jamar Chase is a player who opted out. We've mentioned Caleb Farley quite a bit. He didn't play. There are others.
Rousseau.
Rousseau. There are others who you have to decide based on film from a year ago and the limited workout abilities that you've had to be in person with a player.
And I think
I would cross all those guys off my list.
See,
honestly, this is kind of going to your thing, Paul. You err on the side of caution in this draft. But if any player opted out that had the ability to play, that's school played football, for instance, and they decide they don't want to play with their team, they're off my list.
But see, if you had a guy.
What about a player who doesn't want to participate in a bowl game?
I don't have as big of an issue.
Same mentality on a different calendar, though, different clock.
It's a professional decision.
It's the same decision, but it's way different because they played their entire season, and they're not going to play. If they're not in the playoff, they're not going to play an exhibition bowl game. That's different. That's different to me than I'm going to sit out an entire football season for a business decision. I mean that. If we're getting to the heart of doesn't love football, I'm sorry, but to me that's someone who doesn't love football.
See,
this is my personal preference if I'm a GM, and I'm truly going for this loves ball, loves being a teammate, can't live without it, hungry, aggressive, assertive. If you're looking for those character traits in a prospect, I'm going to go ahead and take every single one of those players who opted out for the season and mark them off my list.
See, I think it's
and I don't do that for guys that opted out of a bowl game, Hutton, to your question. I think that's different in my mind of what I would do. Again, this is if I'm an NFL GM, that would be my mindset.
I think it's case by case, though. There might be the kid, and I mentioned this before, who lives close to grandma, and grandma's got a real health concern, and he realistically has a worry about bringing it home that he thought was a concern, and so for him,
you'd find that out in your research too. If there was an extreme case with someone, then you'd get it, right? That would be the exception for me if I heard about that and said, okay, that makes sense.
But then the other game that goes on is, okay, I think there are probably some teams that are thinking along your way, Chad. But then you draw a number. Okay, we've got that guy minus the COVID opt-out and everything, we've got him 20th. All right? Now, I'm not taking him off my board, but I'm scoring him down. But if he's available at 35, then is he too good to pass up? If he's available at 40, what's my number? Don't you have to put a number on him, Hunt? You can't cross him off entirely. At some point, he becomes too good not to take.
I don't even know if it takes a fall down the draft board. Penei Sewell can be the highest graded offensive tackle.
Well, he's going.
And your next best player is Slater or Jenkins, and you think to yourself, you know what? I've got an offensive line. I have a true need. It's time to protect my franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
We're taking this guy that opted out.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's.
I think there's got to be a draft number or position that would make and I'm going with a very strong position here as a GM, but that would make me rethink that position. If there's a guy that, hey, this is a second-round talent, he's here in the 4th round, right? And he's falling because no one else wants to take a chance on him because he opted out of the season. Yeah, there's a number that would make me rethink that stance. But if it's even close with a guy who on my board that played his year of football and a guy who didn't, if it's close at all, this isn't even a tie goes to that player scenario. This is, even if he's a little bit worse on my board, I'm going with that guy.
Now that I understand.
That's what I came in kind of wanting to talk about, not strictly on the opt-outs, but just on the carefulness of, if you have a little doubt about a guy. I'm not buying that you've got a full feel for him based on 5 Zooms. Based on 5 Zooms and based on watching him at a pro day where maybe your coach got his hands on him, but probably not. And you watched him from a distance like everybody else did, and you didn't get a private meeting with him, and you didn't have lunch with him, and you didn't get to talk in person to mom, dad, secretary, janitor, academic counselor. I mean, even some of those phone calls, you had those conversations, but by phone. And a phone conversation and an in-person conversation are two very different animals in terms of learning about somebody. And so this is a scary draft to me. They're all scary. Because I think we see teams get fooled or miss on some of these things, even with all that in-person stuff, even with the conversations at the Combine, at the Senior Bowl. Now, Senior Bowl, I think, probably shoots up in meaning. We're going to go back after this draft and look at what happened in the Senior Bowl, and I bet you Senior Bowl guys do better than they've ever done.
It also, we're misguided by the team these players go to. There's if Bill Belichick trades up and goes after a player that opted out, we've seen enough on film. If the Cincinnati Bengals are choosing between Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase after they opt out, we're going to be overly critical of the decision to go with a player who didn't play last year. That's the honest truth of the NFL draft.
I think some of that's justified. I mean, I've said it. The Jets loving Zach Wilson makes me not love Zach Wilson. I'm
specifically saying for the opt-out year. I'm specifically mentioning the opt-out year and the mentality. If you're looking for a guy who loves ball and wants to grind and is going to play at all costs, you can have two separate organizations that feel the same way, and I think our response to each organization drafting them would be different.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick's going to get the most out of a player who doesn't really love ball. Like they're going to find a role for him. Where in Cincy, the thought would be, another reach for the Bengals. Is this going to work for Joe Burrow?
I have no problem with Cincinnati drafting Sewell or Chase. I think they're both good players, and I think the top guys who opted out are worth it. I'd go to
it's clearly worked out for them.
But let me be totally clear. I'm saying this would be my stance, and that's not changing. Even if Bill Belichick decides, it's not going to change my mind on what I would do if I were an NFL team. But I'm also not saying that Gregory Rousseau is not going to be a great pro. He may be. Penei Sewell may be a great offensive tackle for 15 years for Cincinnati. He may be. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't draft any of those guys. I would cross them off my board right away. But it doesn't mean that even if Cincinnati drafts Sewell, that he's not going to go on to be a great player. Well, I do think you're right, Hutton. The perception from a lot will be, if Bill Belichick does it, he really knows this guy. He knows this prospect.
Even though he sucked in the draft.
Yeah.
But I think also
Well, if the Steelers do it, if the Ravens do it, I mean, look at successful organizations. It's going to be, well, they know what they're doing.
I think too.
The benefit of doubt.
I think we can agree here, and where you have to be careful is if you take a guy who has opted out from the 2020 season and you expect them to come. The expectation would be Penei Sewell is drafted to start Week 1 in the NFL on the left side after opting out and not playing a year, and he's 20 years old. Like that's where we have the discussion. Are they prepared to start the rookie on the outside for Joe Burrow after having a year off? I mean, that's asking a lot of a player.
And are the Bengals...
Meanwhile, Chase, he may be more plug and play because of the position.
Run this route.
You can get him up to speed.
To start. And also, he played with Burrow, right?
I'm not sure about that. I think he did.
Yeah, I think he
Chase,
did.
he did.
For 1 year. 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some familiarity there. The other question is, and we need to get into this at some point, Sewell reporting to a team whose guys are saying we're not coming to 10 OTAs.
Another offseason like that,
and even a mandatory minicamp, or are they going to be around? For that guy, for the young guy, that's a big deal.
Huge.
And the veterans who are putting together these campaigns and these statements about not coming, it benefits them. Whoever the left tackle is right now in Cincinnati, well, if he's not going and he could get Sewell to not come, guess who's got the advantage as opening day approaches from not having those 13 days?
Yeah, maybe for a couple of weeks, but the writing's on the wall for that veteran who sucks so bad they're taking a first-round offensive tackle.
But it buys him time. And more broadly, across the league, it buys those veterans time and maybe roster spots.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's the investment that you have to. It also speaks to the patience of the head coach. Speaking of what's going on in Denver compared to what is happening in Atlanta. There's different levels of patience between ownership, general manager, coach. We say the same thing about Cincinnati. They need to start cashing in on their investment of Burrow now.
Head coach, and who else did you mention there? Atlanta. I mean, they're just at the beginning. They got a fresh new clock.
Well, and Arthur Blank is known for being a very patient owner. Even though it's an impatient business.
They got a new clock and a slow clock. Denver's got Vic Fangio's already on the probably expiring clock.
And we know that there's a lot of work to be done in both places. Virtually the same record, but more aggressive on Denver's part maybe to come up to number 4 and get their quarterback.
Should be.
A lot to discuss at OutKick 360 on Twitter. That's where you can find us. Tell you about a cool event coming up where you can join us in June. Plus, with some other headlines of the day straight ahead on OutKick 360 across the network. Stay with us.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Really excited to finally have some in-person OutKick VIP events. We're at 6th and Peabody, Old Smoky, Yeehaw Brewery. Awesome day, great questions, good to shake everybody's hand. It's just good to be able to get out and see everybody.
We love to meet with the people that make us possible as a show, the people that tune in, the people that watch, the people that listen.
A lot of these VIPs interact with us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and now we get a chance to come out and hang out, watch games, and interact with them the same way we would interact with the three of us on a daily basis. It's awesome.
If you're at a VIP event, you're going to hear more about the inside jokes, stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You can ask us anything. We want to be with listeners and viewers as much as possible, so we're thrilled.
Looking forward to doing a lot more of these VIP events as we continue to grow.
It's an incredible experience. I would advise everyone out there, if you're a fan of OutKick or OutKick 360, to sign up and be a VIP.
OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. You can follow us on Twitter at OutKick 360. Big thanks to David Reed and Jacob Swanson for making the show happen today. Lance Lee back with us later this week. We joked earlier he's out celebrating 420. Tip of the cap to you, Mr. Lee. Thanks to Becca and Danny. We hope you're awake today.
Thank you.
Oh, Danny boy, is he sleeping on the job once again?
I don't know.
That's a
Maybe.
I don't know why you're in the habit of thanking him. I'm not thanking him for anything.
Sleepy Dan.
Paul likes to take a bit and get legitimately angry about it.
Well, it's not a bit. The guy sleeps.
Yeah, you're not happy with him.
We will be playing golf at Topgolf. 360 Masters coming up Thursday, June the 10th at Topgolf. All proceeds benefiting the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Tennessee and Catfish Jake in his bid for the LLS Man of the Year campaign. Thrilled to help out with this. We've done this each year, and it is back. The 360 Masters at Topgolf. You can purchase your team. It's a bay of 6 players. You can go to our Facebook page. The link is pinned to the top of our Facebook page. You can also find this link on Twitter at OutKick360. It's an Eventbrite link. Click that link. You can buy your bay and join us the night of June the 10th with OutKick360. Again, it is going to be a blast. Cannot wait for a big night supporting a great cause.
Terrific event.
It's going to be awesome. The music that we're playing now during the break's a big hit with a lot of our listeners and viewers. And people asking the name of the song and the band. It's a little-known band called Dad's Acid. You can search their work and download the songs. It's a great band.
The stuff we're playing is unpublished work, but you can find some of their published work online.
Jacob, what was the name of that song we just heard from Dad's Acid? Jacob Swanson back here.
Jehovah's Witness Serial Massacre.
Some of their titles are dark. Particularly of their instrumental pieces.
That song actually reached number 82 on the death metal charts
in Sweden
back in 2008, which is big for Dad's Acid.
I think that was only in Sweden.
Yes. Only in Sweden. Yeah. They're huge in Denmark.
I can totally see listener Evan Cheeseburger now searching on Apple Music, Jehovah's Witness Serial Massacre, trying to find it.
I mean, I'm thinking about searching the song now after that. I mean, Jacob really sold it, so I'm in.
The definition of organizational stability. We can all strive to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, where Mike Tomlin gets a 3-year contract extension. They have had 3 head coaches since 1969.
In my lifetime. 3.
Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin.
Impressive. That's if you want to sign up for how it's done, if you can make it work, that's how you do it. Is you get guys that are so successful that you don't have to fire your coach and they can leave on their own terms, and that's what Pittsburgh's done.
Steelers fans will tell you that Mike Tomlin has not produced enough in the playoffs, particularly, and that's a team that ought to probably be looking for its next quarterback, because this has to be it for Ben Roethlisberger, I would think. Though,
we would think.
You never know.
I love teams like this, though, because they have an identity.
Right?
Like we were going through mock drafts before the show, and I said, Najee Harris projected to go to Pittsburgh in this one mock draft I was reading. And immediately I said, that's a great Pittsburgh Steeler pick. Doesn't that just make sense for Pittsburgh to draft the best running back in the draft? And it really got me thinking with the stability there, but also the Ravens have some of that also. The Ravens make a pick. It seems to always make sense for who the Ravens are and what they're trying to do. There are very few organizations that are like that. Even the popular organization, the Cowboys, the most profitable organization, there's no one player in the draft that they would select and say, well, that's a Cowboy. That is a Dallas Cowboys pick right there. That is a perfect Cowboy when they pick that player. But having not just the stability, but the identity to go with it for Pittsburgh is what's so impressive.
Yeah, and I've said this, told this story before. I was up doing something on the Steelers at one point, and old Mr. Rooney, I was invited into the lunchroom. The press were, at the time, I imagine still, allowed to have lunch in their lunchroom. And the owner of the team was 3 people behind me in line. Doesn't go to the front of the line, doesn't have lunch brought to him, just another guy in the building. And, I think that's something that's very Pittsburghy and very Steelerish that left the mark on me. Also, for Hall of Fame stuff, I'm lucky enough to be a Hall of Fame voter. And in their campaign for Donnie Shell and for others, stuff from ownership come directly from the owner, the request, the campaign materials directly from the owner, not from the PR department, with his home address as the return address on the mailing. No big timerism.
You're not getting that with a lot of other places. That's
I
pretty
can't
incredible.
name another owner that I think wouldn't hesitate to have his home address on the return address.
FanDuel.com/OK360. You can place a risk-free bet up to $1,000. You get that back in site credit if you lose your first bet with FanDuel. FanDuel.com/OK360. Paul, Chad, will you guys be placing a bet on the Braves-Yankees matchup today?
Already done it, Hutton.
What are you going
with? I took
with?
the Braves on the money line. Braves a slight underdog in New York to take on the Yankees today. Both teams struggling. Braves 7-9, the Yankees 5-10 to start the season. But I took a flyer on the Braves on the money line because they were a slight underdog.
I doubled up in a parlay, as we call them. And,
Double the spread.
I took the Yankees money line. They have to win a game at some point. And Jameson Taillon. You love the French pronunciation. Over.
Where would he be sightseeing in Paris?
He would be on the roundabout around the Champs-Élysées.
Yes.
Maybe looking up at the Arc de Triomphe. Plus
All
6.5. Plus 6.5 strikeouts. I got plus 293 on that.
And Chad, you're saying that's a good bet.
I asked him how they're
strikeouts.
striking out right now.
Whatever the strikeout number is against the Braves, take the over every time. Austin Riley might get there on his own today.
I'm very into strikeout props. The thing is, I don't know pitching around the league well enough.
6.5 strikeouts a game, or for the pitcher rather. To me, that sounds very low no matter what game we're watching.
Well, you need
nowadays.
him to get 6 innings, right? You need him to get 6 innings.
Yeah.
That's the question. If you hit him a little
For
bit,
one
he's not
pitcher is
getting
the
6
problem.
innings.
For the team, with the whole staff in today's game, will probably easily get 6
You
strikeouts.
strike out 7 in 6 innings, right?
Yeah. Well,
think a
again,
strikeout an
if he
inning-
stays in the game long enough, I think that Austin Riley and Marcell Ozuna will get that number by themselves.
Make their contribution.
Then maybe 2 players might get that 6 number.
Yeah, I would probably bet the strikeout prop for your start. Well, no, not Morton, but for most of your starters.
No Acuna. 10-day, not disabled list. What's it called?
Injured list.
It's the
Injured
IL
list.
now, the injured list.
I saw an amazing. It was like a 6-minute piece on the Yankees from MLB.com with Joel Sherman, who I believe is still with the New York Post, on our pitching staff's figuring out the Yankees, and is that part of the problem? From 2018 to now, the Yankees went from seeing 46 or 48% non-fastballs, 10% more non-fastballs now. So, guys like to be able to sit fastball and adjust. And they're seeing 10% fewer fastballs in just the span of 3 or 4 years. That's dramatic. The Yankees home run hitting team want to be able to sit fastball with guys like Aaron Judge and Stanton and Sanchez. And if they're getting 10% more off-speed stuff, that's huge. Some of these baseball numbers I'm seeing, we're going to have a big conversation about this, but the changing of the game just in the last couple of years in terms of foul balls and strikeouts and home runs.
But it's accepted, though. Like
We've got to do something. I think they've got to make some changes to get batted balls in play, at least.
But the analytics crowd
it's how to win.
Seems okay with it.
It's how to win.
The front office staff seems okay. Right.
Oh, yeah. It's not entertaining, but it's how to win baseball games.
May I bring to light a tweet that I sent you guys right now before we close out the first hour of the show? Jemele Hill responding to a report from Adrian Wojnarowski about Brad Stevens receiving a $70 million offer. We can talk about that also.
John Gruden money.
Indiana came to play. 7 years, $70 million. So $10 million a year to be Indiana's basketball
He's
coach.
a terrific coach.
And Jemele Hill retweets and says, because there was a response that said, Mike Woodson got $52 million less in his contract. He got $18 million. And she writes, all of this, Brad Stevens is a good coach, but when white coaches get branded as geniuses, their value skyrockets. Meanwhile, black coaches with similar resumes are undervalued because perception sets the market more than reality. I don't want to comment on what she's saying about black coaches versus white coaches, but on what planet do Mike Woodson and Brad Stevens have similar resumes?
They don't.
I mean, Brad Stevens, did I miss the memo where Mike Woodson was a head college coach in the state of Indiana that took a lesser program to the Final Four twice and to a national to a national championship game? It's not similar at all. Brad Stevens has been a better NBA head coach than Mike Woodson was in his stops as a head coach.
They settled.
I just don't understand how it's similar resumes. I have no problem with offering different coaches different pay based on their performance. Brad Stevens is worthy of $70 million. Mike Woodson may show that he's worthy than way more than $18 million in the contract. And if he does well, guess what?
Give me the
He's going to get a huge raise to stay.
Give me I don't know basketball coaching that well, and she might have a legitimate argument, but it's not with Woodson. Give me the comp. Who's the black coach? Who's Brad Stevens?
I think you're really searching for something to be outraged about when you use that as the example. There's got to be another example out there that's a better example she could use, right? But when you're responding to a $52 million difference in what Brad Stevens was offered and Mike Woodson's being paid, that's apples and oranges.
Let's talk about Juwan Howard in 6 years.
Think about the locality of it. Brad Stevens grew up in Indiana, played college ball in Indiana, coached at Butler in the state of Indiana, did great things there, has done well with the Boston Celtics also. It's not similar at all. I just think we're really reaching for a story when you tweet something like that out. But to your point, Paul, there's got to be a better example, right? I would like to see that example of what she's talking about. This is not that example.
Yeah, I don't know NBA coaches.
To me, the big story here, if the numbers are accurate, it's that Indiana offered a former Butler head coach $70 million over 7 years, and he turned them down.
I know.
What's he making with the Celtics? We need to look that up.
Let me look that up. That's a good question.
He's a terrific coach.
That is a big. Well,
20 years ago, if we would have said that Indiana would have offered the former Butler coach $10 million a year in a 7-year contract, and he turns it down.
Well, I'll say.
What would we think about that program?
You keep saying the former Butler coach. He's currently the Boston Celtics head coach. So it's not as big of a stretch when you say any college program is offering the head coach of the Boston Celtics currently $70 million.
Right, but I'm strictly saying from the Indiana perspective.
Yeah.
I
think that it means
30,000-foot view of the perception of the program.
I think it means they're serious about getting basketball fixed. If I'm an Indiana fan, I think that actually excites me.
Would have been number one
that you see that money being thrown around. I'm not upset about it.
And we always say chase the number one target, and they chase the number one target.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at my school for chasing him, but to what you're saying, Hutton, yeah, it's a big story that he turned down $70 million to get back into the college game where he was super successful. And he's done a good job with the Celtics also. They've struggled a bit this year, but they're red hot, I know, right now. But it's a huge story. I mean, that Indiana, I think on both sides, that Indiana is playing ball to the level of $70 million. That is big-time football coach money in college. They're offering their basketball coach. And couple that with the fact that he turned it down to stay with the Celtics. Big story on both sides of that.
Coming up in the Tennessee Power Hour, some questions we've yet to ask about the Tennessee Titans going into the NFL draft. And some questions that float out there for the offseason as big decisions to make, but under the radar of topics of discussion right now as the draft nears. Also, the Nashville Predators in the thick of the NHL playoff and the Stanley Cup finals playoffs hunt. They win last night 5-2. We'll give you the details on the current playoff standings. Plus, we'll get into Tennessee football, and we talk alphas for Tennessee football and basketball straight ahead on OutKick 360. Hang with us. OutKick 360 and the Tennessee Power Hour is here. Alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski, I'm Jonathan Hutton, David Reed, and Jacob Swanson making the show happen for us today. Glad you're with us wherever you may be listening, on YouTube, Facebook, on Twitter. If you're watching there, we appreciate you. If you're listening in Knoxville, Fox Sports Knoxville, Fan Run Radio, we are headed to K-Town. We are headed to the Hill. The orange and white game coming up this Saturday. OutKick will be there at Old City Sports Bar.
That's right. You see the graphic if you're watching right now, noon to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Old City Sports Bar. Obviously, in the Old City is where you can find us, and it's going to be sponsored by Nelson's Greenbrier Tennessee Whiskey. Looking forward to a big day and going and checking out the orange and white game. Also, if anyone knows how to touch up a photo that you see up there, Clay Travis is awfully tan compared to Hutton and I in that picture. It was winter, I believe, when that picture was taken for us because we were quite pale.
You know what this is?
Next
This is
to
us.
Clay.
This
Clay
is
looks
us,
like he's in full color, and it looks like we're black and white in that photo.
You also look very small, Chad.
Yeah, it's like mini
small
Chad. Yeah, it's small.
You can
small
fit in that
Chad.
chair better.
Right.
I
I can fit in Clay's pocket.
Kirby would think that you look great in this.
Yeah, fit in the chair.
He's like that Chad could sit in studio and not look uncomfortable. Chad on the screen right
What a
now.
great-
That's perfect for that chair.
If you missed our visit with Kirby yesterday, you need to go back
tremendous.
and listen.
Kirby's
Kirby,
critiques.
critiqued our.
Do you want me
our
to?
set.
Can I share what he sent me?
Yeah.
of course.
This was
You don't ever have to
unsolicited-
ask for permission to with
Regarding
anything.
Kirby.
I didn't know if I was breaking the code here. He said, I want to thank you guys for the birthday gift today. It made the day for me. Great to hear from all of you. That from Kirby,
awesome.
Allen Kirby.
That's awesome. It was.
Thank you, Kirby.
It was great seeing Kirby. It's great seeing Kirby on his birthday or any day,
Or any day.
for that matter.
Look, Kirby
Or
may
anything.
appear other places, but he's not. He's misused.
Yesterday, we got into a great draft discussion for the Titans on some scenarios for mock drafts for the first 100 picks. 4 picks in the top 100 for the Tennessee Titans. And overwhelmingly, the majority of you on Twitter said option B was your favorite, with Zaven Collins, Rondell Moore, Elijah Molden, and Ronnie Perkins. This was my favorite as well. I didn't set out to make option B my favorite, but in the mock draft I came up with, this lent itself to to hit on some positions of need while also addressing some great athleticism.
Did you use a mock draft generator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to take a stab at this. Maybe we'll do it two more times. I'll do one and bring in 3, and
I'll do one
and bring in
also
3.
because it does it. Whatever you
Sets
use
off the
Hutton, to make that
conversation.
happen, it was great because it was perfectly imperfect for all of us. Right,
Yeah.
each scenario there wasn't one that was like, oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
Which
right
is kind
there
of the draft,
with
yeah.
those players. Right. I mean,
Yes,
but
exactly
But even
the
I'm just
draft.
saying for personal wants for what the Titans need. With all of us, nothing lined up perfectly, and it really made an interesting jigsaw puzzle to have that exercise yesterday.
Yeah, let's do it 2 more
and hopefully
times
people
between
enjoyed
now
it.
and the draft.
Let's do it. Okay, so a question in a scenario that we have not discussed, but I feel like we discuss it every year, and we haven't brought it up yet. And it is a scenario for the Titans at 22 where, well, as I mentioned, they have 4 picks in the top 100. They have 5 picks in like the top, 126. They pick again at like 120 something. Could you see a scenario, would you buy into a scenario, if you're John Robinson, this year, where you trade back out of 22 and you end up with 6 picks in the top 130 after trading back at pick 22? Because consider the number of quarterbacks we're going to see off the board quickly. At least, I think we all agree, 3 wide receivers on top of that. A tight end. Now we're at 9 players. Offensive tackle puts us at 10. There's a top linebacker. There are at least 2 corners, maybe 3 off the board by 22. That gets us to
126 is their next.
126. So that gets us to a situation where the Titans are going to have plenty of all of these options that we've discussed on the board at 22. That means great trade discussion for John Robinson. It also means he has an option and an opportunity to pick up an extra player by trading back and having actually more picks in the top 130 In my scenario, you trade out of 22, you get a high second-round pick, and you still end up with pick 53, pick 85, pick 100, pick 126, and you can pick up some extras based on trading out of pick 22. You fill other positions, but you still stay relatively high in this draft.
I only like that scenario, Hutton, if the obvious guy that they need isn't there, right? If there's a run on corner and you're past the point of the corners you love in the draft are there, right? They're all gone at that point, let's say at 22. And you have the flexibility to move down and pick up an extra pick and then still have, different positions there at wherever you trade down to that you could get a really good player. I think that's the only scenario for me because I'm not in love with the idea of the Titans trading down in this draft. I think they need to stay there at 22 and get someone.
I want value. I want better players. Better players generally come higher. I could see it in this scenario. It seems to be a consensus that the top 3 cornerbacks and then a gap, before maybe Newsome.
But Newsome could be right there.
The top 3 receivers before, Tony or Bateman or whoever you've got next. And so if they're comfortable after those 3 are off the board, not being the team that starts the next group of corners, of wide receivers, of whatever. I would like it to be a wide receiver or a corner, but who knows? I think if it's not a corner or a wide receiver, they're more likely to stay there and get that guy, because then those 6 players are off the board, including the things you were listing, the X number of quarterbacks, X number of tackles, all of that. More likely to stay at 22 and take a guy who maybe is closer to the top of his group. But if you move down and you're comfortable not triggering the 4th corner or the 4th wide receiver or whoever it might be, whatever the bunch is, and say, we like one of the next 3 corners, we like one of the next 3 wide receivers, and you're comfortable getting one of those at 28, 29, 30, and that deal punches you in the face, okay. But I think that's something that very much develops over the course of the day. It's not predestined. You have to see how things fall.
Well, I think you also have to say, are you willing to trade? Let's use Zaven Collins as the example because that's the mock that everyone loved. Or if Zaven Collins is available, are you willing to trade Zaven Collins to pick up an extra pick in the 2nd and 3rd round where you get your tight end and you get your wide receiver, but you pass on Zaven Collins? And you can also address corner,
edge,
and you can stick with the other players that we had on the board.
Yeah, maybe.
Because again, in option B that we just showed on the screen, you're not getting a tight end in the top 3 rounds. Yeah, and that is a glaring position of need that we've addressed on the show.
Thin position in the draft.
Yes.
The thing is, it sounds great in principle. Now you're talking about, 5 or 6 picks.
Right now they have 4 in the top 100. I'm saying, can you get 6 in the top 130?
And it sounds great, but the odds of you hitting on all 6 of those...
Well, what's Robinson's odds of hitting on his 1st-round pick?
Yeah, low based on history, but you can also say...
And you're also just upping the percentages of hitting on more of them with more picks.
You give them another option, and you get another top 130 talent to add to your roster where you've lost some
and you can address more of these holes, and they're considerable holes.
And if we're going to play the John Robinson history game with this, you're picking up a pick in an area of the draft where he's done better.
Done well.
Right? Like you're adding a pick in a spot where he typically performs well as opposed to 1st round.
I mean, you found Derrick Henry and you found A.J. Brown, 2 of your 5 best players, your best player, and I mean, arguably two of your very best players.
Would you trade, instead of naming positions and players, would you trade one elite player, which there's a potential for the elite description to be on a player at 22 that falls to you?
Zaven Collins, for instance.
Well, let's take names off.
Take names off. Okay. Elite player for 2 starters.
No. They need elite players. That's where I am. In a general conversation, they need blue chip elite guys.
I mean, it's all subjective. I would then follow up and ask, how good are the starters?
Contributors.
Not just guys who are just there.
2 contributor, like instant starters.
I need elite.
It's a tough question for me. because I do think that they need a starting corner.
Yes.
And they need a starting pass rusher.
And a wide receiver.
Yeah, and a wide receiver. So
Nah, the starting pass rusher isn't going to start right now.
Right. I think it's more about wide receiver and corner and tight end.
I think I would see. I'm on the opposite side of this. I think I would take the 2 starters over the elite player.
I think every chance you have to get an elite player, now I know it's not a guarantee, and they've failed to do it, but they don't have enough elite players. And elite players are ultimately what makes the difference in the NFL.
Well, now I will throw in a name. Caleb Farley, elite talent.
Yeah,
Didn't play last year, and he's got a
health
back issue.
Yeah, that back issue is the story for me.
He falls into, and it's a different injury.
I think somebody probably takes a stab at him before 22 because of the talent.
I think we could see a Jeffrey Simmons type fall for him. And it's a different injury altogether. We see players come back from
Simmons
the ACL all the
half a
time.
year.
But is he immediate? Maybe not. Is he an elite talent that's going to be a starter when he's healthy? Yes.
Here's the other
He's that
question
guy.
on him, Hut. Like, we know batches of doctors have gone to Indianapolis for the rechecks, and he's been one of the rechecks. Has your doctor happened to be in the batches of doctors? Because we know they'll be more comfortable if their doctor was pulling on Caleb Farley and looking at his back, as opposed to getting a report from a pod of doctors that didn't include their doctor, right? We know that's how the NFL works, right? You're much more comfortable if it's your doctor than if you're taking a report from other team doctors.
Keep in mind,
and so do you luck into that? That's a matter of luck.
This is not a December injury. He just had the microdiscectomy in March, in the middle of March.
Yeah.
So, and may have been at the end of March.
May not have even been
end
seen.
of March. So, I think he's been seen.
Since then?
I don't know. He's not drafted unless you've been able to assess what you're drafting. But
you agree with me though? There's a difference if your guy's seen him and if you're taking a general report from.
Yeah, you're not drafting him unless you know.
And that's a luck of the draw thing. If your doctor happens to be in the group that sees him or not.
Guys, coming up, let's discuss 2 positions across this Titans roster that deserve discussion, and it may not happen in the draft, but there are 2 positions that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about moving forward. Let's go ahead and set the table. And then, Chad, alphas for the Vols in football and basketball, and who would fall into that category?
Tone setters. Alphas. Who sets the tone on this Tennessee football and basketball roster? We'll get into a broad discussion with that.
And a big week for the Preds continues. OutKick 360 rolls on. Live from Studio G in Nashville, Tennessee, Blackbird Academy and the Blackbird Studios is where we are. We love being here. Over 14,000 square feet of rehearsal space. And if you want to go to school for this, if you want to go to a college, Blackbird Academy is the place for sound engineering, for studio engineering. If you want to be on site here at a state-of-the-art studio, if you want to be on the road with your favorite musician and touring, they can teach you how to do that. They can make sure you're in that line of work. TheBlackbirdAcademy.com for more information on the great work the McBrides do and their entire staff here at Blackbird Studios. Love being here at Studio G, and we certainly appreciate them for their hospitality for OutKick. Guys, two positions for the Titans that I failed to mention in our comfort level discussion last week. And I'm not trying to insinuate that they should use a draft pick on either one, but we completely left them out on comfort level. The first is kicker. There is a massive hole at kicker.
Look, this team gets nothing out of 6th, 7th round draft picks. I haven't looked at the kickers, but if there's a kicker that's rated 6th, 7th round, technically they should have taken him last year instead of Cole McDonald, a quarterback that didn't even make it to training camp or made it to 2 days of training camp. Take that guy this year, and like Blankenship should have gone last year.
Borregales from Miami, according to our lads, is a 6th round grade at kicker. He's the only draftable kicker.
Somebody else may beat you to him, but I'd have no problem if the Titans spent 6th or preferably a 7th on him.
Well, so there's comfort level where Paul says, yes, use a draft pick. Use a draft pick on someone.
Well, what have they gotten out of a 6th or 7th round draft pick under John Robbins?
Well, they used a draft pick on a quarterback. They've used two late round picks on quarterbacks.
Both complete ways.
It's we can kind of laugh and joke about drafting a kicker all we want, but a game's going to come down to that.
It worked out for Indianapolis last year.
Yeah, at least one, right? I mean, they're going to win or lose based on a kicker.
I mean, my presumption is that they bring Gostkowski back.
Okay.
I would draft this guy to compete with Gostkowski.
Right now it's Tucker McCann. The other one that we just don't discuss is Logan Woodside at backup QB. Now, comfort level in the starter, no question, and that was our discussion last week, was comfort level in the current starter. But how do we know anything about Logan Woodside?
All we know is that they put a lot of time behind the scenes into getting him ready for if and when he has a chance. I would have liked to have seen an Alex Smith, if he hadn't retired, but he had a lot of better options. Where he might have gotten some time, or to mentor a young guy, and Ryan Tannehill doesn't need that. There was some movement. Tyrod Taylor is now in a starting situation in Houston with the Deshaun Watson stuff going on. I just said this before. I think the Titans have so many other things that they need to deal with that backup quarterback didn't get to be one, and I think it's going to be Woodside again. Drafting one doesn't solve anything because you've got to spend the time to develop, and again, with a limited offseason, you're not going to get
it. Stop them from Cole McDonald.
What's Cole McDonald up to?
Cole McDonald, once the COVID thing came around, they bagged it. And Cole McDonald, I think, got signed in Arizona, I want to say, where he'll not do anything. I'll have to double check if it was Arizona, but Cole McDonald's a dumb pick.
Well, they drafted him in the 1st of May last year, once the COVID thing hit. I mean, the discussion of the other guy they have on the roster, Paul, is Deshaun Kaiser.
He
signed a futures deal. He signed a futures contract with them, so he's on their current roster.
Yeah, Cole McDonald is on the Cardinals.
Okay.
I wouldn't expect him to.
Where's Luke Falk? What's he up to?
No. Let's just go down the list. No.
I hope they get off of that and realize we're not going to find help.
Is Billy Volek spleen healthy?
We're not going to find help at quarterback in the 6th or 7th round, and let's stop doing that.
Okay, so
let's draft a defensive back with a trait who can be, Chris Jackson, who did something last year, right?
Or, and he's at some time, at some points, he's more than just depth for this team based on the way they were injured. And
Unfortunately,
yeah.
But he had his moments.
But let's discuss the kicker just briefly, because some may roll their eyes on, using a draft pick on a kicker. Well, you don't have to compete in the unrestricted free agency where they swung and missed last year on bidding for some guys that went to other teams and did well. Or did more than what we saw from the kicker position last year.
Were they in on kickers outside of Gostkowski? They just sat and waited.
Well,
with Greg Joseph on the roster until Gostkowski was healthy enough, and then it seemed like that was the guy.
I think the anticipation was they were going to sign someone as an undrafted free agent, and they waited on Gostkowski. And then it looked like that was the plan all along. And maybe that's what they do this year, too.
Gostkowski settled down and was fine. He got off to a bad start. They signed, is it Morgan Cox as the long snapper? Yep. And there seemed to be some outside indications that long snapping with Bo Brinkley was down quality-wise in the bad kicking year. But McAfee suggested this, in the bad kicking year and in Gostkowski's bad start, that the long snapping was not of the same quality it was before that. Maybe that was part of it. But Gostkowski, after a shaky start, settled in last year and was pretty reliable. If they could get that second half Gostkowski next year, that's perfectly fine.
I have no issue using a draft pick on a kicker, honestly, when you get in the later rounds.
After what we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I mean, the hope is you could just bring in a guy and he's going to be effective. But if there's a kicker there that you like, go get him in the late.
I think we're about to hear more discussion on that for them.
I think that the Titans, to me, it's pretty clear that the Titans, John Robinson, super controls the draft, and he can handle it through about 5 rounds. And 6th and 7th round are generally the rounds that are given to scouts. And the Titans have a lot of young, inexperienced scouts. And if they're standing on the table for guys, they haven't hit on any. Otherwise, John Robinson's overextended in 6th and 7th rounds, which I understand. You're getting into players, 200, 300 there. And a GM going that deep is overextending himself. He needs help there. And the help that he's getting in his term has been insufficient. They've hit on 5th rounders. But they've not hit on any 6th or 7th or many undrafted free agents.
And it's not just using a draft pick on a kicker for this year. Imagine if the Titans went out and got their Jason Hansen for the next 20 years or 15 years. If they got a rookie kicker who hit immediately and you did not have to worry about kicker for 10 to 15 years. I mean, those are the good ones are lifetime appointments. They're like Supreme Court justices. They get in a job and they stay healthy. And they kick for a long time. They can kick for 2 decades. It would be great if the Titans found themselves in a situation where you know that you're set at kicker for a while with a young guy.
If you did it once every 12 years. Plus, again, I'll say, it's not like you're missing out on these great 6th and you're not getting Cortland Finnegan these days. If you're missing out on Cortland Finnegan, then I'd say no way. Cortland Finnegan's way more valuable, or the chance of hitting on Cortland Finnegan is way more valuable. But there are no Cortland Finnegans walking through their doors anytime recently.
Cortland Finnegan's not walking through that door anytime soon, is what you're saying.
Neither is Daquan Jones, because he has signed with the Carolina Panthers.
Look, I had issues with Daquan Jones at times during his career here because he didn't penetrate. Once I came to accept him for what he was, I think he was a valuable piece of this defense. He was a captain last year. He was a respected guy. He did a lot of dirty work. Some games he was an absolute terror as a run stopper. But $7 million a year is what he got. It'll be interesting to see what he gets from Carolina. He was making $7 million a year the last 3 years with the Titans. That's too expensive for what he would be giving them now with Danico Autry as the number 2 defensive lineman. He would have been 3rd. And so now, he's a guy you say, hey, he was a very good Titan, and he put in a long term, and you wish him luck where he goes. And now you say, you hope Tier Tart is healthy and durable enough to be out there for them for nose tackle snaps, and that Larrell Murchison can be the 3rd lineman. But I think they need one more guy there who's probably like what we're talking about, a 5th roundish kind of pick, or even better, a undrafted rookie or a late veteran free agent.
Rappaport says it's a 1-year contract.
Yeah.
So you think the number is above 7?
I doubt it. I've read a lot. Albert Breer, in this column we were referring to earlier, said defensive tackle is just bad in the draft. And so I think that's preemptively addressing the position, because you're not expecting to be able to help yourself in the draft at a weak position. So good for him, and I hope he goes there and has success. I can imagine, I would expect that he may be a Nashvilleian post-football.
The Preds got it done in Nashville, 5-2 last night over Chicago, who they will play 2 more times, coming up Wednesday and Friday this week. They had a quick puck movement last night early on. Duchesne scoring the first goal of the game, his second game back after missing 22 with injury, so he makes an impact. Granlund continues to play well, and then 2 goals in the first 41 seconds of the third period put it away, made it 5-2. And the Preds win a big one. Updated point total in the Central Division as we check out the latest standings. The Stars and Blackhawks flip after last night. It was Chicago that was right behind the Predators, 2 points behind. And you can see now the 4-point gap between Nashville and Chicago. But the Stars won against Detroit. They now have 48 points, so a 3-point advantage for Nashville in the 4th and final playoff spot out of the Central Division. 2 more games against the Blackhawks coming up on Wednesday and Friday this week.
I thought the 2 goals at the beginning of the third,
18 seconds apart,
off the forechecking, just really nice. And you had Tanner Jeannot, who scored, and Trennan were in front of the goal.
Jeannot, don't you know?
Yes.
Yeah. In front of the
really
goal.
wish he was a Yankee for that reason.
Yeah, right.
You wouldn't be able to get away from it.
And in front of the goal alone, and then Luke Kunin, when he scored, in front of the goal alone. And this is not a situation where they have to plant themselves against defensemen, because the Blackhawks are trying to come out. And so you turn the puck over with that forecheck and pass it to a guy who's sitting in front of the goal alone. Those are very nice, easy, simple chances. That's terrific when you're able to score so easily with easy opportunities, instead of having to fight like hell to score and put a game away with those 2 forecheck turnovers. Terrific.
How much more excited would we be about a possible playoff series if it was full attendance at Bridgestone Arena? I mean, that's what you crave in the playoffs, right? Is atmosphere, and that's what you have in Nashville.
You were there. What's it like?
I mean, it's what you'd expect. It's different.
You know what made
there's just not as many people there, but
crazy enough, the rally towels made it seem like there were more people in that building on TV.
But we're getting excited about the Preds possibly in the playoffs, and we should be. And I think it's going to be one playoff series, but still having that one playoff series is something. It's so much more, though, when we're talking about a playoff atmosphere. If it was full attendance for the games, I just think it would add something to this push late in the season if you knew that you were going to have that atmosphere in Nashville.
Here's what I thought watching the game last night. The Preds right now are really good. And UC Saros, if he clicks in, they can surprise some people.
They are.
I don't know if
they're
they can
good
right now.
Carolina,
they're good
against Carolina.
Well, they're good against the bottom of the league. I mean, I think they look good against Chicago, and then they look terrible in 2 games against Carolina. And that's been, other than that blowout of Tampa, where they played really well against a really good team.
You refused to bet.
Yeah. Hutton's pick that I did not use. Yep. Other than that, though, I think that they look really good against Chicago, and they look not as good against the good teams in the league. I would be more of a buyer with the Preds possibly making noise in the playoffs if I saw them perform better against the top of the division, which they're not.
David Reed is a season ticket holder of the Nashville Predators. He is the chairman of the board. Reed, your thoughts on the current April 20th version of this team? He's not buying them the way I am.
I'm not. But also, what's this team going to look like when Philip Forsberg comes back?
And they're close.
And they're close to getting him back. Duchesne was back. He was active The last couple of games, that's the best that I can say about it.
Sure.
Kyle Granlund's playing very well. I mean, guys that we thought
really
were
good.
on their way out of Nashville are now playing very well, and guys that we had no clue even existed for the season are contributing to this team right now. I don't want to mess with the chemistry of this team, but you got to have a Phil Forsberg back to make a playoff push. You got to have him back to beat Carolina.
Hey.
So that looks like that's going to be the first round matchup.
You've
I
made it
agree.
over there a couple times. What's the atmosphere?
Have you been over
do?
We were over early on when they first started allowing attendance again, and it was very quiet. It was like a funeral in there. And last night on television, it seemed a lot more like a Nashville Predators hockey game.
It did.
I can't look
Chad's
at this camera.
responsible for
I
that.
can't look at this camera angle at Reed. We need to flip back to
Go
that. Because
Yes,
it's like the camera was made for Jacob. And is
And
more
then you're
squarely
just
on
leaning
him.
into
And
Jacob.
Reed is like looking into the
There we
looking
go.
into there we go
Sure.
on Jacob's
Right,
camera.
real quick.
And leaning over.
Let-
It's great the way it's positioned.
Side note here for our radio listeners and for those listening on the podcast. Chad, I would like to go back to the camera of our great production staff with David Reed and Jakob Swanson.
Two-handed
I would
man.
like for Chad to rate the two shirts being worn. The Goonies
Well, it's-
on David Reed, and we see Rocky
I mean,
and
this
Stallone on Jakob.
I feel like we're talking to three guys, first off, because
Two-
Stallone is very present.
two classics of modern American cinema. When you look at the shirts of these fine men with the
Yes.
Goonies and with Sylvester Stallone, circa 1976, I believe, for the original Rocky.
Correct.
And that is terrific shirts. And I love the jackets. Sometimes he'll have a cardigan on, I notice with Jacob, but the variety of jackets
He's got a rotation.
that Jacob brings to the table, and then this T-shirt, he's really
He's always warm.
himself.
He's always warming himself.
He was explaining also, Jacob, what did you say about Sylvester Stallone's looks? That he's not a classically good-looking guy, but
Yeah, it's just good to have if you're going to have somebody's face on you, they should not be really, really good looking. It's like, he's really cool, but not really good looking.
Right.
So he's not taking anything away from me. Plus, my face is covered right now, so it helps just have a face to look at.
so Jacob will be wearing in a shirt that has William H. Macy on it tomorrow.
Yes,
Just
well,
a-
what he's basically saying is that shirt that I give him my face on, he's never going to
Jacob, I don't know if you know this about me. I don't wear people's faces. I have no shirts with people's faces. It's just a thing of mine.
Jacob is
I like that shirt, though.
Jacob is terrific.
That's good
And,
on you. On you,
I
that
love
looks
his
good.
style. Jacob has a very clear-cut style. Like, his style is very defined.
It's great.
in terms of what fits him
What
and
he
what he's
does.
going to be wearing. It and that Rocky shirt with just Sylvester Stallone's face on it perfectly fits Jacob's
And I must say,
persona.
as we're talking about the cinema, Rocky holds
Please,
up.
cinema.
Rocky holds up. But I must say, I pressured and pressured and pressured my family. My wife had never seen or did not remember the Goonies. And I was trying hard to get Simon to move off of the cartoon movies into more real life. And I pressured and pressured and pressured. Finally, they gave in on the Goonies. And it did not hold up. It did not live up to my expectations. There was I thought the whole movie was the adventure, and it took half the movie to get into the adventure, and it was a bore until they got.
So you felt
on
like
the
you were
adventure.
telling the group, hey, I promise it's going to get better right here. It's getting better right here.
Yes, I felt the whole time I was guilty, and then when it was over, I apologized.
This is the opposite of the experience I had with Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it absolutely lived up to what I remembered when I went back and watched it. There was something, though, I watched recently, maybe with Evie, or it was just on, and I turned it back to it, and did not hold up to what I remember. My recollection of it was that it was much better than it actually was.
Well, I
By the way,
also-
speaking of Rocky, I do want to make this note. Sylvester Stallone wrote a treatment for a Rocky prequel for Netflix, and he posted it on Instagram with his handwritten notes outlining what the show would be about. Basically, a late teens, early 20s,
Rocky
late
Balboa?
60s Rocky Balboa that I believe it's his working with the mafia guy, a leg breaker, the loan shark, and how he gets involved in that, and he's trying to box on the side also. I would watch that. I mean, if it was done right, I mean, Sylvester Stallone's writing it. It's going to be good. He's written all of them. I think that'd be cool.
I also had a big problem with Benji, which I loved as a kid, a movie about a dog that, I don't know if you remember. There's a kidnapping in Benji that somehow I had just completely glossed over in my life. I mean, we got to that with Simon, and this was years ago. He's like, "What's going on here? I'm out."
Next up,
And I was like, "Yeah, I understand."
Paul's going to break out Fatal Attraction for Simon. Man, I didn't realize it was this graphic. That elevator scene was not what I recalled.
Yeah.
Wild
Sorry
Things
about
is
that
not what I
rabbit.
remember.
My parents
Sorry about that
put
rabbit.
Fatal Attraction in the VCR one night when I was like 7. And I'm watching it with them, and we get 5 minutes in, like, yeah, maybe you need to go to bed. Just go do something in your room right now.
I will see your Fatal Attraction and raise you, and I spit on your grave. That my dad,
Oh.
the weekend that we got a VCR when I was a child, went to the video store and thought, oh, this looks scary. This would be something good to watch on a dark and stormy night.
The title didn't give it away?
No, not really. Not the way the first 3 minutes of the movie gave it away.
Yeah.
I've told you guys about my most embarrassing moment is I talked my grandmother into letting me and my brother rent Jerry Maguire.
Oh.
And we get home and put it on in that opening scene where the guy's just pounding it out. I mean, it was
It's very early in the film. Yes. There is, and the wording of what she's saying as it's happening, and the heart.
I had to be like,
let me rephrase.
12 years old.
I was going to say the hard thing about that, but I'll say the difficult thing about that scene is that it's a quick transition cut.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It is. I remember it because
Get into
I'd
it very
seen it
fast.
before watching it with my parents, and I got up to avoid the awkward moment and went to the bathroom. It's while they see each other at the airport, and he sees Renee Zellweger and the kid, and then she's talking about Jerry walking away, and she says something like, whoever snagged him must be one classy lady, or something like that, and immediately cuts to that scene with him with the girl. But you got to know, because you're hearing it while they're showing Renee Zellweger's face in the airport, and there's no build-up. You know, the awkward moments, sometimes there's like a build-up where you know, okay, I need to leave the room if it's going to get hot and heavy here, because you don't want to see that around your
The
parents.
question is always how the parents handle it.
grandparents.
So what did your parents do during this?
My grandparents.
grandparents?
I just remember we were staying the night for some reason there, and we had I love popcorn. We had made popcorn for the. I just couldn't believe that she didn't look at the rating of the movie when we rented this thing.
Everybody's
Rated
got
R. I
this
was like, this is unbelievable. And it's 1996, 1997, and we get home, and I'm like, oh, my friends talked about seeing Jerry Maguire, which they were all lying, and I was like, I'm finally going to be able to see it.
That was my night.
That sex scene at the beginning is just like the blood, just the gut, like you just turn white, just ghost white. Like, I'm not going to be able to see this movie now. I'm not going to be able to pull this off. I can't even get 50 minutes into the film without an
They're gonna
F-bomb.
turn it
Oh, it's probably like 18 minutes in. We'll have to go to Mr. Skin to see the exact mark in the movie, but it's like it's very quick into the movie.
Did you have one that your parents drew the line on? Like
Fatal
I was
Attraction.
no, but like that they would not let you go. So all my friends had seen History of the World Part 2, and that for some reason was one that my parents just were like, you cannot see that movie.
Because it's blasphemous?
No, just like it was rated R or whatever.
Yeah, mine was just the rating. I couldn't go see rated R.
And everybody was talking about it.
My parents looked at a rating. Like I just
Did
watched
they not understand the rating
with them.
system?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching things I should not be watching at a young age.
But it was the rental. So the rental
kid.
is what they would check, because they would always see what we brought up to the counter to rent from Checkout Video or Blockbuster or whatever it was. But if we went to the movies, well, the thought was, they're not going to sell a ticket to a kid that's 13 to get into rated R without a parental consent, so they're fine. They can go to the movie and watch PG-13. No, we never did. They were actually very strict at 3-Star Cinema in McMinnville.
3 stars.
3
on a
stars.
scale of 5? 10.
They never said. It was also 3-star mall.
I applaud the honesty. We're 3 out of 5 stars. I mean, we're not ducking who we are here, people. We're not going to dress ourselves up. This is not some Regal corporate outfit. This is 3-Star Cinema. 3 out of 5.
I mean, if you're looking for raised seats, we ain't got them.
No.
That was it. But like we would go to PG-13, and that was fine, but not R. That was so I can't tell you a movie. It was just the rating that we couldn't go see.
I really hope that we start going back to the movies as a people, because it's one of my fondest memories growing up with my dad. He would take me all the time.
Yeah.
He worked for a school system at the time. He had summers off, so we'd go, twice a week.
I don't need
to the movies.
Yeah, I don't need to go that often.
I'm loving it. Nobody's taking calls or bringing their kid.
Oh, I
want to go once or twice. There's a feeling behind a blockbuster movie that you need to be in the theater for.
Yeah, like when the next Mission Impossible comes out,
Yeah.
the Top Gun too. I want to see those in a movie theater.
Or the
and
Bond,
I'm sure those will be
James
in movie
Bond
theaters.
movies, whenever that's a-
Bond movies.
You got to see that in the theater.
The Marvel comic book movies. If you're going to go see it, you want to go see it in the theater and
Don't
not at
go
home.
see it. They're
You
done.
don't watch any of them?
They're done.
No. They're done.
I feel like the
Paul just declared the Marvel universe dead.
I mean,
It's done.
All those
It's
comic book
expanding
movies
because
are-
now it's all going to Disney Plus. So it's actually getting bigger right now.
yeah. You guys, I'm sure, had the friend who could get away with watching literally anything at a young age, right? Like anything.
Yeah, I was that friend.
You were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that was
the guy.
me.
So I remember this kid named Randall, and I was in middle school at the time. He was like middle school Jacob Swanson.
Yeah.
Okay. And I walked into his house. We were getting ready, or just left basketball practice or something. Anyway, he was walkable. He lived within walking distance of the school. And I remember going in, and he was watching just right up close to the TV, Barbed Wire with Pamela Anderson.
Wow.
With his mom, like making noodles or something, and I'm just like, "This is unbelievable!
blind?
I want to go. Can
Was
we
she a
hang out
blind?
every day?"
Randall's
blind
house is
woman?
We're
awesome.
watching Barbed Wire, and
Is she a blind woman?
no, she didn't care. That was just that one kid that could, he was the movie. He was the movie genius.
That's not
Wire,
one that I
I mean,
could have
that's-
watched around my parents.
You remember
I
this
will
movie?
say.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not one I could have watched around my parents. But credit to Randall and getting away
Barbed
with
Wire.
it.
But I do
I
remember.
love the way you framed it too, where he's like up on the screen.
He's up on the screen. And we're barely old enough to know what we're watching. We know Pam Anderson's hot.
Yeah.
And
Kid's motorboating the TV. The screen.
he's getting hungry. So we're watching Pam Anderson, but I remember thinking, like, this movie really sucks. Like there's a lot of action to it. But that's
I love
lot of plot.
I love Hunt at a young age. It's like Gene Siskel. He's like, man, this plot's really not coherent. It's like what
don't know
watching
why.
Barbed
It's as if
Wire.
they
with
made
Pam
it
Anderson.
just to feature
I went
Pam
from
Anderson.
Jerry Maguire to barbed wire. I remember the opposite ends of the spectrum, being able to watch and finish barbed wire and not be able to make it through the first 8 minutes of Jerry Maguire.
Have you since finished Jerry Maguire
Oh,
in
yeah.
your life? Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Good. That's
The
one you
human
need to
head
watch.
weighs 8 pounds.
Yes.
Beast
And it
can
li-
smell fear.
See, that also lives up. I love Jerry Maguire, the movie.
It's a good movie.
I think of it often
Oh,
whenever I
it's-
see Tom Cruise.
It's an all-time. That's Tom, and I'm a Tom Cruise fan. I've
Yeah.
said this.
Oh, you love
That's
you-
Tom
you
Cruise at
love
his
you some
absolute
Tom Cruise.
apex.
Who
in
is
the role.
taller, Tom Cruise or Sylvester Stallone?
I think Sylvester Stallone.
I would say Sylvester Stallone.
Okay.
I think
think
Tom
if-
Cruise
we used to go to celebrityheights.com
If
a
Jacob
lot.
stood up,
on our old show.
I think they would see eye to eye, Stallone and Rocky on the T-shirt.
You could take him, Jacob.
You could.
He's very old now.
Chad,
He's 5'10". It says 5'10".
Oh,
I'm
he
not lying.
towers over.
Tom
Stallone.
Cruise is 5'7".
Oh, he towers
Stallone's
over.
5'10"?
He towers over Tom.
I thought he was much smaller
74
than
years
that.
old, from Hell's Kitchen, New York, New York.
I thought he was
Sylvester
much shorter than 5'10".
I buy 5'10".
This could
I
be,
didn't
this
know
could be a
him
new
to
game
be
on the show.
particularly short.
Guess that height.
I think we've played
Bruce
this before.
Willis,
Bruce Willis is 5'8".
I don't know.
6 feet tall.
Wow.
Bruce Willis is 6 feet tall. How about that?
So many stars are short. Always guess short.
In some cases, extremely short. Coming up.
Tom Cruise is
Look at
almost
Ray.
almost a little person.
Coming up, the next film you want us to discuss. Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360, and we'll give a quick preview of.
OutKick 360 goes to the movies.
Yeah, hit us up.
Lebowski says, "Gosh, I just didn't recall Porky's being this wild."
Oh man, stick with us here on the OutKick Network. Wrapping up a fun show as we read off the plot of Barbed Wire, OutKick 360 on the OutKick Network. In all seriousness, Greg Cosell with us tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. We announced this yesterday. Greg Cosell of NFL Films joins us weekly, every Wednesday, right here on OutKick 360, the weekly podcast exclusive to OutKick, debuts on Thursday.
I've got a
It's gonna be
great
lot of
question ready for him. I'm going to ask him if he has any second-day sleeper edge rushers. I've heard that
You know
went
that's what Greg
really
loves.
well. I've heard
You
he,
know
well,
that's what, yeah.
I know him well. I know how he loves imprecise, wide-open questions, and I heard this question went really well elsewhere.
He is terrific. Looking forward to getting Greg back with us. And also looking forward to seeing how Barbed Wire ends as we continue to read through the
Never
plot.
saw the ending.
have a
Never
And
read it.
I look forward to going down this wormhole of celebrity heights that I'm now on, and I'm just thinking up more celebrities to search and find out how tall they are.
How tall's Pam Anderson?
Well, that's a good one. Let's find out.
Who is taller,
5'2".
Pam Anderson or Tom Cruise?
I'm way better with
Same height.
guessing guys' heights.
5'2".
5'4". I'm
Pam
going to
Anderson's
say
5'2".
5'4".
I think she's tiny. I think she's like 5'3".
5'2".
5'7".
Wow.
Pam Anderson.
Shame.
Taller than Tom Cruise.
And she wears heels a lot, too.
It's
Don't
why Tom
forget
Cruise
that.
turned down the role of in Barbed Wire for Eleven.
The leading man, whatever that role was.
Yeah.
Nobody remembers
Can you
that
imagine
role.
the pressure of being Pam Anderson's love interest in Barbed Wire in 1996?
Think
was
of the
a big
size
role.
of
Or whatever.
platform shoes Tom Cruise has to wear to be eye level with Nicole Kidman when they're in a movie together. Because she is a tall woman.
I think she scrunches
I
down
want
a
to say
little bit,
she's
too.
5'10".
There he goes. I'm going to say
I'm saying she's
5'8".
I love
Five-
guessing the height.
5'9".
Nicole Kidman, 5'11". 5'11". How about that?
Fun
Way to
show
go, Nicole.
I'm
today.
here all day.
There
I'm
you go,
here all
Nicole.
day. I'm just going to stay on camera, and the viewers can just send in suggestions
Tweet.
of who I should look. and I'll
Tweet
tell you.
heights. Tweet people, and Chad will tweet back their heights.
Primary complaint tomorrow. Greg Cosell tomorrow. Of course, the Tennessee Power Hour will be jam-packed. We'll hit the Tennessee Vols Alphas.
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't get to
We'll do that.
And then
We
I'll
ran
tell
out
you
of
how
time.
tall Penelope Cruz is tomorrow. Also.
5, 6
I'll look that
and a
up
half.
tonight and come back with that info.
Big thanks to Jacob Swanson for making the show happen today. David Reed is the chairman of the board. Thank you to Becca Risley, Sleepy Danny,
Not to Danny.
Sleepy
Emma. Is Emma still with us? Is Emma still with us? Yes, Jacob.
Before we go, I just have this really good image that I think is perfect for you, Jonathan.
Okay.
It's a movie store that only has Jerry Maguire.
Seriously? Oh. There it is.
That is perfect.
That's a lot.
Hunt, if that
Oh,
was in
Jerry Maguire.
McMinnville when Hutton was growing up, he would have frequented
They're
that
never
store
out
many
of it.
times.
Never out
That's
of it.
right.
That's terrific.
Go in there, Jonathan. Go in there with everyone and pick out a nice movie
You
for the
and
weekend.
Randall. You and Randall in there going crazy.
If I could find,
Randall.
if I could find that Jerry Maguire cutout, could we put it behind Hutton on our center studio every day?
He'd be about Hutton's
If
height.
it's life
Tom
size,
Cruise
would
just
you be able to see
lords-
him?
He just
He'd be Hutton's-
lords over Hutton.
He'd be Hutton's sitting height. Mm-hmm. What's Randall? Tomorrow I want to know what Randall's up to.
That is a great. I hope he's alive.
We got some homework assignments. Penelope Cruz's height, Randall, an update on him, a wellness check with Randall, and finding that Jerry Maguire cutout that we can
I'm
put
off the
in
hook. I'm off the
Randall
hook.
is no doubt celebrating 420. If you are partaking like Lance Lee, enjoy
Lance.
on this April 20th.
Lance, we miss you. Come back. But I hope while you're being responsible on 420, you're not blocking the box and you are locking the locks in case somebody's going a little extra wild on 420 and getting hot.